Get to the point quickly. As a consultant, you're basically paid to investigate or recommend something or do some research in some area. And it's very important to be able to get to the point quickly, what you've done, to be able to explain your conclusions. That's why I started by making this a point, because no one wants you to talk for 2 hours before getting to your final conclusion. Secondly, you have to be very clear with what the purpose of perhaps the research or the assignment or what you're doing is, or the presentation, or in this case, this video, and the goal with that. So in this case, my goal is to share with you some of my learnings or findings over these 10 years of strategy, market entry, IT, consulting, programming, and so on. So be clear on that. What's the purpose of this presentation or meeting? Then also how you can build trust, how you have to be logical and hypothesis driven, or at least it will help you a bit. The difference between important and urgent, action over perfection, the fact that decision fatigue is a real thing, and also how you can work on your social and communication skills, and the difference between being busy versus being productive, and also, making impact, and also the power of daily habits. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to share with you some personal tips that I do every day or habits that I have to make you more productive. So let's get started. Number 1, get to the point. So be sure that you're concise and upfront with the message that you want to tell your audience or the client or whoever you're talking to. And also be able to summarize on a high level. So someone said, if you can't explain it clearly, you haven't understood it well enough. So, or someone also said, like, I didn't have enough time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one, because it's much easier to just collect a lot of data, present it, and do a lot of slides, or have a very long presentation. But to say it in 10 words, that's very hard. And also be very clear to structure how your argument is made up and how you came to this conclusion, and make sure that you cover everything. So for example, in academia, you can buy very long books if you go to university, but you feel sometimes you can summarize this in just a few paragraphs, because those get paid sometimes by the number of words you put in. Whereas consultants, if they're really good, maybe get paid a lot to do something very fast and quickly, regardless of what kind of area it is. So, instead of presenting for 3 hours, tell them in 3 minutes, and I'm sure they will think you're very valuable. And also, present conclusions in the beginning of the presentation, or your speech or meeting. This is what we're going to do. These are the conclusions. If you have questions, feel free to check up the appendix, or we have a detailed discussion later. And also use something called MISI, so mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. I can do a separate video on that, but basically make sure you've covered all the different parts and they're not overlapping, so you're not revisiting the same topic several times, and you don't forget something. Secondly, be clear on the purpose and the goal. So start with the end in mind. Why are you doing this? Why are you having this meeting? Why are you doing this presentation? Also, some people are very busy. You have to remind them what's happened the past week or month since we met last time or we talked last time. And also be very clear with what the vision and the objective is, okay, for this year or this week or this meeting or this project. The purpose is to, we're going to be the leading brand in sport nutrition, or we're going to send people like Mars, send people to Mars like Elon Musk. We're going to achieve, 100 million in sales, or, this week we're going to get 10 meetings, or we're going to implement this feature, or we're going to build this new app. Our ambition is to be the best in this field. And then you take that and reverse engineer it. So you set the target and then you break it down to like, okay, what does that mean if you do it in a year or 10 years or, a week, 10 hours, spread it over several team members. And then if it's an argument you're trying to build to prove something or disprove something, then you break it down. For example, it could be arguing for that we should move, do this decision or invest in this stock or something in a breakdown. Or losing weight. Okay, I want to lose 10 kilos. What does that mean per week, per day? Okay, how does that translate into actions? Or saving money. I want to save $10,000 in 3 years to go on a big trip for a year or something like that. What does that mean? And then what parts do you need to convey in a meeting, for an example, and what evidence, so you focus on that when you set the plan. Okay, next one, how to build trust. So basically in any relationship, like trying to sell something to someone or build trust with a new client or a new person or a new team member. So there are a few different ways to build trust. One approach is to make sure that people trust you as a person because maybe they know you from a conference or a speech or a personal introduction from someone else, or they believe or trust the organization that you represent. You work for a big firm, a big tech firm, or an auditing firm, consulting firms. Okay, but you still have to bridge that to who you are as a person. So they trust the organization, they trust you, and of course the product or service that they have to sell. So maybe you can exemplify what you've done before, what that means, what impact that had. Then when you're building trust, you don't want to come across as a sleazy salesperson, just talking them down, and no one wants to do that. Instead, ask interesting and relevant questions to understand their needs, or in this case maybe a consulting assignment, what are their biggest needs, what are their struggles, and then you can perhaps tell them something about those areas or those industries, to show that you understand the problem or the situation that they are in. Then you can suggest perhaps a way forward, instead of just taking like, okay, we have this product or this service, here's the solution for you, before you've even understood if they need it. Perhaps there's no need, or you have to refer them to someone else. Okay, so the next one is to be hypothesis driven. So this is basically a way of structuring your work, or finding a way to argue for where you want to go in a more structured way. So we think that the case is this or that, or we need $100 million to do this, or the best way for you is to enter this market, or we think we should implement this new feature in our new app. Okay, then you look for arguments or maybe data to support that, or you try to make a prototype or something like that to see if that's the right way forward. And it can turn out that is not the case, and then you adjust. But instead of finding out all the different options there is, because then you spend too much time. Basically here, don't boil the ocean. So, finding every possible solution and find the best one. It's more like here you set a boilerplate, so to speak. So you limit the area of investigation, and then you go forward from that in order to make it more efficient, because no one has unlimited amount of resources. If you can only spend like a week or a day, not a year, how should you do that in the best way? The next one is one of my favorites, important versus urgent. So when you decide how to spend your time or energy, make sure that you choose the tasks that produce, the most important things. So you consider if something is important versus urgent, also called as the Eisenhower matrix. So basically, if it's very urgent, you need to do it now, you have a deadline, and it's important, you do it yourself now. If it's urgent but not that important, you basically ask someone else to do it because it's not a focus of yours. If it is very important but you don't have to do it right now, you can start planning and preparing for it. And if it's not urgent and not important, you basically try to find a way to ignore it. Maybe just, there's no impact ignoring it. You miss something small, but it's not really important, it doesn't have an impact, then you can do it. So think about this when you think of how to do tasks and what to do and in what order. Then there's also sometimes another dimension called significant that you can kind of add on top of this. Basically something that's not important or urgent right now, but over time it can make a huge difference. For an example, if you're constantly working too late, maybe you need to hire someone, or you have to improve your skills. Or it's like investing. It doesn't make a big difference today, but in 20 years there will be a big difference. And if you never start, there will be a massive cost in the end. So it's worth taking that time out to recruit that person, or train this new person, or changing your habits, eating better, for example, exercising. You're not gonna see a difference tomorrow, but in 10 years that could be a very, very good difference. Then also action over perfection. So basically starting is often better than planning forever and making the ultimate perfect plan it's going to have the best effort. But if you never get there, you will have no results at all. So it's better probably to follow what's called sort of the 80-20 rule, where you see that in many areas of life and business, 80% of the results or the value come from actually 20% of the effort. So starting, going to the gym 3 times a week, if you've never ever been before, that's gonna make enormous efforts and results. You don't need to have the perfect training plan and the perfect diet, but just starting and doing something small will make a very big difference. Same when you look at clients' revenues. Normally like 80% or sometimes even 90% come from a few clients, or if you talk about income streams or profits for that matter, it comes from a focused area. So you can normally cut away a lot of other things to make it more focused. And get started, get that ball rolling, and then adjust along the way and start getting the ultimate plan. It's probably better to do that and tweak along the way in order to spend forever thinking if you should start and what you should do, and then you probably get nothing done and losing out on so much momentum. Just like this presentation isn't perfect, I'm sure there are like spelling errors or something like that. I could write the perfect book that's ready in 10 years, but that's never going to happen. So it's better to spend a few hours doing this now instead of overworking it. Next one. Decision fatigue is real. So basically, if you've seen any world leader, president or CEO, sometimes they wear basically the same thing every day. It could be a suit, but it could also be like a turtleneck or a t-shirt, and there's a reason for that. And also, meals are easy, maybe the same breakfast, same lunch, looks very boring, there's nothing fancy posted on Instagram or anything like that. But, you take away decisions that don't really move the needle. So only spend time and energy on things that actually matter, and unnecessary choices you try to eliminate. Because basically you get tired over the day if you do a lot of different choices. So if you can only make 10 or 20 important choices, why spend 5 of those on what kind of toppings you're gonna have on your cereals, or like what color you're gonna have on your socks, or what shirt and which tie. You save that for very important high impact decisions. And also do them in the morning when you have the most energy and inspiration. Don't wait till the afternoon. And of course, some people think it's very interesting and fun to think about what you're gonna wear, what you're gonna eat. That's your life, that's your interest, and that's fine. But just be considerate about that. And if you can come up with a solution that's easy and easy to follow, you can also free up some time and definitely save some mental energy. And also, when it comes to decision, don't save the annoying or the tough decisions to evenings or the end of the week. Sleep on it if you can. I know it can feel good to get those tough decisions out of the way and just feel good to breathe out, but it's probably not the best thing. And if your gut feeling says it's not, you're just kind of pushed by someone else to do it, it's probably better to think about it and wake up, sleep on it, have a clear mind, and then you do it in the morning instead of just rushing through it because it feels good. That's probably not the best way. Okay, working on social and communication skills. That's definitely not that's promoted a lot, at least in the schools or academia where I grew up. And communication is different a bit depending on where you come from and where you grew up. But in the world of business or life in general, social media and all this, it's very important to be able to communicate clearly and what you want. So as someone said, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in the world, both in investing and also communicating actually what he thinks and believes, having his annual meetings in front of thousands of people, he says that developing public speaking skills can increase your net worth by 50%. And who wouldn't want that? He also said that learning his skill, changed his life. Remember, he took a course in his young years. If you read his biography, you will find out. And he, has basically referred to this many times during his life, implying, or showing that this is very important. And also, when you start working with other people, maybe you hire a supplier, or you outsource a work, or you work with colleagues in a team. It's very important to be able to be very clear and don't say like, "Oh, hi, I want a good report fast." Okay, what does that even mean? What is good? What is fast? What's high quality? Or find a trustworthy supplier. Or a nice looking color, what does that mean? A graphic. Have to be very specific and think about that. It's like if you were the other person on the other side, would you understand clear what this mean or not? And also, of course, if you give feedback, try to be objective and constructive and solution oriented, not just give, negative feedbacks like, "Oh, this report is very bad," or "You're too slow," or "I don't like this layout." Okay, can you be a bit more specific, please? Don't be sarcastic, don't be cynical, give creative, constructive feedback. Like, I think if you change this or that, they're probably better, or if you said it this way, that could be more helpful. I don't have all the answers, but I think that changing these things could be better. It will be faster, more clear, something like that. And no one wants to work in a toxic, destructive work environment. So I think that's a good way to handle it sometimes. Okay, number 9. So if you just get 1% better every day, that's 38% in a year. And you can only imagine what that would mean over, a decade or a lifetime. So, being busy is not the same as being productive. So doing the right things, improving 1% per day, doing something a bit smarter, learning something, getting a bit better at doing something will definitely pay off over time. and making sure that you get closer to your goal. And make sure that you're doing, what moves the needle, not just, oh, I've been so busy today, I've done a lot of stuff. And then you think about what did I actually accomplish today? And you don't remember even what you did. And especially looking forward, like, a week or tomorrow, or 5 years, what you did today, did that actually matter? If you're, going weeks thinking like what I'm doing now doesn't have any impact or doesn't move the needle, I think you probably need to think about, your way of doing things or what you're doing. So, using a to-do list, this sounds very basic, but a lot of people don't do it. But using a physical to-do list is proven to stimulate the brain and to make you more creative. And just writing down your top 3, goals before you come into the morning, before you open up the email, before you open your computer or just a notebook, and you put it down there. So when you go back, or you leave the office, or close down for the evening, you can check, did I accomplish these things, or did a lot of other things get in the way, before you get cluttered with like 100 emails. That makes you sure you get closer to this day or this week's most important goals. And of course, if you can, avoid letting others dictate completely your agenda for the day. So get something accomplished that's important to you. Otherwise, you're just reactive. You never you can never be strategic with your own time. Okay, 10. So daily habits. Diet, that's one thing that I never ever considered until in my 30s. But I think it's definitely more important than most people think and realize, to have a very stable energy level. And I'm paying a lot of attention to this right now. As you maybe know if you follow my YouTube or Instagram channels. Basically, have a nutritious, healthy, low sugar diet with low processed carbs. So, not sugars, not a lot of jams, white bread. Unfortunately, this is very common in many parts of the world. Or, you buy a croissant with chocolate on the way to work, you're running, you have coffee with sugar. Eliminate that if you can. Have maybe like, oats, or like high fiber, whole grain bread if you want to eat bread. So your blood sugars don't spike, because then you get energy fast, but then you get hungry like in 1-2 hours, and you lose energy and you focus on what you're going to eat the next meal instead. Better to have a nice, slow digesting, high fiber and high complex carb meal. If you want to have ideas for that, check out my Instagram and my other videos here. And of course you don't feel as bloated, and get these kind of sugar crashes after lunch, basically. Then standing up working is another great tip, actually. And also just, reducing interruptions and distractions. Some people say it takes 15 minutes to get back in the zone, so to speak, after you be interrupted. So someone, calls you, or someone taps you on the shoulder, want to talk about something, you get an email, you get distracted, you have to go back to, doing that, report you were working on, that PowerPoint slide. It takes forever, and then you interrupt it again, and you sort of, all of a sudden 3 hours go back, and you're down some rabbit hole somewhere, you don't even remember what you're doing. So what I do is, I listen to sometimes music without lyrics, or I have, noise reduction headphones, and I'm a bit crazy, so I listen to sort of white noise, or just those kind of sounds in the background, like rain, that kind of things. That doesn't actively bring out my interest, because if I listen to some music that I like, I actually start listening to that a bit too much. Also, turning off notifications. So of course this depends on if you can do that. It depends on what kind of work you're doing. But if you don't have to respond to things like immediately, I suggest turning off all notifications. Definitely not looking on your screen on your phone. I always put it upside down, no sounds on, turning off chats and Outlook notifications, things like that, so you can actually focus for hours if you need to be. And if something really urgent, I go in and maybe check it once an hour, something like that, unless I know that I'm waiting for some very important emails, because then you can actually get things done in that time zone before getting interrupted. Okay, then getting close to the end here. And then I'm going to go into some personal bonus tips, basically. And I see I wrote part 1 or 2 here. That's a mistake. It's 3 parts. But getting up early and eating an energizing breakfast, as I said, and exercising in the morning. So that could be, go for a walk, listen to podcasts, go running, or you're just preparing mentally. And think about your own things, actually, especially if you're out exercising before you get stuck in the work. And then, when you get to work, you've already done most of the important things done. You may be mentally prepared for the day, thought about the priorities. So you go in, just write down your to-do list, get things done, and you get a lot of physical and mental energy from the food, but also endorphins from actually exercising. And of course, sleeping. of course, it's hard to get up early, but if you start getting up early, you get more tired in the evening, and then you go to bed earlier, and then you have more energy. And of course, if you go up early and actually exercise and eat healthy, if someone actually calls you and want to meet after work, you don't have to feel guilty about skipping exercise that you planned, or oh, I was planning to have a very healthy dinner and now someone called me and wants to have drinks, because you already had exercise in the morning and a healthy breakfast and lunch perhaps. So it's fine to do that, and then you can both balance socializing and being healthy and doing spontaneous things, and you don't have to feel guilty for breaking out of oh, I promised I was going to go to the gym 3 times this week. Then also just the 3-minute rule for tasks. If someone asks you to do something, or you get a task, or you remember something, okay, if it takes less than 3 minutes, do it immediately. But also, if that is, you get 100 emails a day, that's 300 minutes. That's basically 5 hours. So if you work 8, 5 hours are gone. You only have 3 left. So you have to be a bit careful with this and prioritize. So going back to the matrix of, important versus urgent, I think this is a very good way of thinking about it. And of course, getting 100 emails, if you actually go through them, even if it's not, 100, you get tired. So make sure you spend energy on the right things, and avoid answering emails immediately just because it feels good and getting through those, because you get this dopamine rush of getting things done. If it's not important, not urgent, do it later, maybe in the afternoon. It doesn't have to answer right now, probably. Of course, depends on what kind of work you're in, but I think that's a good way of thinking about it. A lot of people are just reactive, but then you're not strategic about your own focus, mental energy, and strategic about how you spend your time and energy. Okay, this one, sleep, prioritizing sleep. That's definitely not something I did the first 30 years of my life, basically. Sleeping too little, having too much coffee, energy drinks, and so on. But I think the older you get, of course, the less the body can tolerate that, and has a bigger impact on your well-being. And especially the more senior you get, if you're working kind of in an organization, maybe you have a team or people below you sort of that report to you, the more important that is. And if you quote Jeff Bezos here, the founder of Amazon, it's not about maximizing the number of decisions we make in a day. That's not what's count. It's making a number of small ones that are really important and have a large impact. So if you start sort of cutting down on your on your sleep to get more hours in and feel more productive because you had like 100 decisions, you might feel more productive, but that's actually not the thing. It's about the quality of those decisions. So you don't make like the wrong decisions. You just do them to get through them. And also, just the mental freshness you feel of getting like 8 or 9 hours, which I rarely get, but compared to 4 or 5, it makes an enormous difference. And I definitely did not think about it a few years ago like that, but I can at least tell you from my own experience that I get a lot more done. I feel a lot more inspired, a lot more creative when I get that sleep in. So I think it's definitely worth cutting back 1 hour of work or 2, and getting to bed earlier and sleeping longer. Then another one, caffeine. I touched about it earlier, but basically caffeine has a half time of roughly 5 hours. So it means if you drink coffee 5 hours later, it's still half of that left in the body. So I try to not drink coffee after 2 p.m. I mean, I used to drink coffee like 10 in the evening, midnight, studying up late and so on. But it ruins your sleep, basically. And it can vary how sensitive your body is and also how much you drink. But, it's very important to keep it in a controlled level. And also it actually affects physically how your body, you're kind of in a very alert state because you're triggering that adrenaline rush when you drink coffee. So that's not natural, and it's very exhausting for the body. And it's actually an addictive substance, as a lot of people probably know. So, if you're addicted and then suddenly you don't get it because you're out traveling, or, you run out of coffee, or there's no coffee in the office, you get maybe like a headache or a migraine, and you only think about that, like, I have to get my coffee, or, or my sugar, or whatever you're addicted to. And of course, it's very, economical to skip on it as well. Especially if you buy it out, you can save, a lot of money in a year. So, brewing it at home and cutting back are 2 personal tips. Okay, so that's actually some of my personal tips for being more productive and getting more things out of it. It's not only consulting, more like tips in general. But if you got something out of it, if you have other things you want me to, focus a bit more on, it's my first time doing this, let me know. If you thought it was interesting, give it a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.